I remember a medic of mine, she did not think she could be a pilot. She didn't think she could be a medic. She used to go over to the fence near the hospital and watch HEMS pilots land these helicopters and the medics and nurses get out. And of course, years later, she became the oldest pilot in U.S. history in the Army. But there's somebody like her right now who doesn't think they can do it. Tell them right now what you think about that.
It's not if you're not smart enough, it's do you put the work in. A guy who shows up for a brief and he's prepared for the brief, but he struggles in the aircraft, we're going to give him extra time. Someone who shows up unprepared, didn't study, it's hard to do that. I can't make you study, but I can help you with the stick skills. So I think anybody out there that if this is their goal or their path, it's obtainable. Lots of people do it. It's just you got to put the work in. To me, I laugh every day. I love my job. My attitude has never changed from when I was washing dishes on the Saratoga to now flying EMS with some great med crewing for a great company like Metro.
Welcome to Make the Donuts. I'm your host, Erik Sabiston. I'm a best-selling author, a dual-rated airline pilot, and a career counselor. I've helped over 8,000 people make the jump to the airlines. Now, I'm interviewing successful people from a variety of professions around the world. It's time to learn their secrets for success. Make the Donuts starts now. Welcome to Make the Donuts. I'm your host, Erik Sabiston. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, I've got a very special guest, Scott Moak. He is a former crabber turned Navy enlisted guy who became a pilot, a naval aviator, and then he became an airline pilot, and now he's a HEMS pilot, Helicopter Emergency Medical Services pilot for Metro Aviation. So today we're going to learn all about how to be a HEMS pilot with Scott.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I really look forward to doing this. I saw your list of other guests, and it was quite impressive, so I'm not sure why you wanted me on here, but I figured, okay, it was good enough, I'll come on.
Yeah, it was eye candy. That's the whole reason. So you did what I wanted to do. Here I was a young man, and I wanted to be a naval aviator, and I was enlisted, and I was in a helicopter squadron in the Navy Reserve. But you did it. How did you do it? You went from enlisted to naval aviator. That's the first question I have. How'd you do that?
So, just to backtrack just a little bit, when I went off to college, I was 17 at a medical college of Georgia studying radiation therapy. And I was just too young to be there, dropped out, went back to the local college in Savannah, dropped out again, and I got a job at a Navy shipyard. I was a yardbird, working heating, ventilation, doing installations on the coastal mine hunters, the MHC class ships that are not steel, they're glass reinforced plastic, made for coastal mine hunting. And then I got laid off. So there I was, 19, no education, no real training, had no future. And I met a lot of really cool sailors, to people who've been in the Navy, who were working out at the shipyard. And I just kind of like their stories. And that's how I ended up going out to the recruiting office and enlisting into the Navy back in March of 1992. And I came in under a special dive fair program. So at that time, in order to be a diver, EOD, or SEAL, you had to have a source rating. So you were a gunner's mate diver, bosun's mate SEAL. Now those are the individual MOSs or jobs. So I came in, I wanted to be a diving medical technician. Went off to boot camp in Orlando, 92. And of course, they didn't have hospital corpsman available. And all the jobs they had, none of them I liked, but they had Navy photographer's mate. I said, well, that sounds kind of awesome. So I went from boot camp off to photographer's mate A school in Pensacola. There, finished up my dive test, went from there to dive school in Panama City. And still being kind of young and not well prepared, I tried it out at dive school, unfortunately, and got orders that week to go to the USS Saratoga. So then I just kind of started a normal pipeline of a typical sailor. You got sea duty. I had 5 years of sea duty. But what I started doing was taking classes on the ship. A lot of people don't know there are civilian college professors that come on to ships on deployments and teach classes. Plus, you can do CLEP tests, where you can take a test, and if you score high enough, you get the college credit for it. So I applied. I tried for a Naval Academy spot while I was on the Saratoga. Didn't make it. The Saratoga decommissioned, went to the USS John F. Kennedy, was there for 4 years, did the same thing. Tried for a commission, got my associate's degree, kept working on other college degrees, CLEP, and then went to shore duty. And by the time I got to shore duty, I went to night school on the weekends while I was also working part-time at a hotel. And my wife, we were just about time to have our firstborn. So I was doing all that, and I just didn't think the whole commission thing. Pilot was a pipe dream. I was just wanted to get commission. So I dropped a package with the Secret Service. And I went in for a special agent interview. I went in for a panel interview where you have 3 agents. You have to listen to a report writing exercise, the treasury enforcement exam, the physical. This is over several months. And they were doing a background check. And as a backup plan, I dropped the officer package. And then I got the phone call and they said, hey, you got picked up for pilot. And it was just kind of unreal. Yeah, I just made E6 6 months before. So I was a first class, petty officer first class. And it was just one of those that you never think it can happen to you type deals. So, of course, at that point, I decided I'd already been in the Navy almost 10 years with the time I'd had it committed. So at this point, I think I'll just stay in the Navy and be a naval aviator.
Wow, that's so it was pretty easy then.
Well, I think it's important to include those failures along the way because everyone sees success. They see the hard work or what you get. They don't see sometimes, I think, the failures. And it took me 3 times to get a commission. It took multiple times at different colleges to find the right one, the right path for me. And I think that's why I like to bring those up when I talk to people or mentor people, because it's not always easy and it's not always on the first try.
Yeah, it's not always just a straight line to the Naval Academy or college to do ROTC or perhaps get your degree on your own and then go OCS. There are other circuitous pathways like you took to getting there. And so you were an E6 Petty Officer First Class. How old were you at that point?
I was roughly 27, 28. So I went to OCS down in Pensacola, and I saw the name of my class chief, and I was like, there's no way this is the same guy. My class master chief from OCS was my boot camp chief from Navy boot camp in 92. So 9 years later, the same guy, the same red rope. And he remembered me. He said, you look familiar to me. So that's because you pushed me through boot camp in 92. And so when you do your first salutes down the road, I gave him my coin, first salute, and I said, look, you pushed me from civilian to enlisted, and you pushed me from enlisted to officer. So I hope this coin,
wow,
you keep off special. But yeah, I did the OCS route, and then primary flight school through the pipeline. But you're talking about age. I got my wings a month before I turned 30.
Wow, you were getting called grandpa. That was your first call sign, probably.
I was older than a lot of my flight instructors.
I believe it.
Yeah, that were typical just lieutenants. I mean, I was just, and kind of always have been through my career from that point on, which, I played to my strengths and have other people play to my weaknesses, but I would use that to my advantage without having an attitude kind of just, hey, teach me. I'm willing to learn. You
went through the pipeline, at a time when the military was kind of drawing down. You had the rifts and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, definitely in the early 90s going down. And then we saw kind of the rebound a little bit, not to get political with different elections.
Sure.
Later on in the late 90s. And they started doing targeted pay raises for a while for certain ranks and years of service. So an E5 with 7 or 8 years was getting a higher pay raise than an E4 with 2 years of service. They did that for a while.
Let's talk about flight school. So you went through flight school, you went through all the initial training and the courses. You started out in what airframe?
So for flight school, I did T-34. I was in VT-27 in Corpus, and I was there during 9/11. And we were in kind of trailers because they were doing rehab of our hangars. So we had no TVs. So we just had to listen to the broadcast of everything that was going on 9/11 on that day because we just didn't know, initially it was an accident, but without any TVs, it was kind of like being thrust back in time with just everyone huddled around the radio, listening to hear what was going. So, but that did cause delays throughout the training platform with everything because aviation kind of shut down. We didn't know what we didn't know at the time, what was going to happen. So I was there a little bit longer, I think 7 or 8 months for T-34 primary flight training. Then went to HT-18, which was in Milton, Florida, Whiting Field, north of Pensacola, and that for advanced helicopter training.
Awesome.
And I winged the September of 2002.
Okay, and so you get out to the fleet, you're doing your workups and all that stuff. What was your first overseas deployment as a pilot?
So I got selected for the H-3 Sea King, which are the old, we even have some of the old Marine ones. We did executive transport.
Yeah, I see them every day.
Yeah. Well, if you ever go to the Reagan Museum or the Pensacola Museum, I have flight time in both those aircraft.
I've seen them.
So it's
for
always
sure.
kind of neat to go there. So my first deployment on that side, I've already done 2 on the enlisted side, was to Bahrain as a desert duck. And there we're supporting all the ships in the North Gulf off of Iraq, the North Arabian Gulf, the NAG is what we call it. So pack, smell, cargo. Everyone kind of does some type of search and rescue, but the bulk of what we did was moving people, mail, cargo out to all these smaller ships that couldn't fit a cod, that's with the carrier.
Yeah, like ash and trash.
Yeah. But we were masters of it. We enjoyed it, and I think the Navy has struggled in some ways with identity for some of the helicopter platforms. But we were straight pack, smell, cargo. We were great at it, flying people out. So you have people leaving for emergency leave. You got CAS rep parts that you need for a radar system, plus just mail. And we were, especially around Christmas time, doing a lot of mail runs out there. So that was my first Navy deployment as an officer out there, still as I was a JG, so I was an O2, Lieutenant JG, still as a JG, made aircraft commander, and then deployed again as aircraft commander to Italy. Because I'd kind of somewhat made it through the pipeline faster at it, other than those few delays we talked about. I didn't have any other delays. I mean, I just ran through. So I finished my second deployment still as a Lieutenant JG,
Wow.
which was to Italy, which for a deployment it's not too bad. It's really that's a pretty nice one to do for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how many hours did you get on your cruises and on your tour in Italy?
In Bahrain, I feel like we were flying that's a busy base there, and I think we were getting like 50 or 60 hours a month, because it's a 3-hour flight just to get up to the North Arabian Gulf. Plus, you got to hit 4 or 5 ships on a coalition ships. I mean, we're hitting Singapore ships, Australian, British. So we're doing a lot of those, then back. So I probably got on that deployment several hundred. And then you had to have 500 to even make aircraft commander. So I was probably about 300-ish, 300 to 400 is my guess, just top of my head. That was a long time ago. And then my second deployment, that was a 1 aircraft, 4 pilot detachment. So it was much smaller footprint.
Was that on a small boy or?
Well, it was shore based, but what you really are 6 fleets, the 3-star out there, who's also dual hatted as NATO command. You're essentially his transport. So when he embarks on a ship, you go with them to be able to fly him in and out. If you need to evac him from Gaeta, which is where the base was at the time, well, we were down in Naples, or to do any just normal flying stuff out to ships, but it's a very small detachment there. So you were only getting 15, 30 hours a month for during that deployment. So not a whole lot with there. And the other problem in all of that was it was the sundown of the H3s. They were getting rid of them. The Navy replaced the H3s and the 46s with 60 Sierras. So as they were getting rid of them, they had limited flight time to try to save them, to eventually get them out to Davis Mouth into the boneyard. There's not, it's infrastructure. They're not continuing to invest in these because they are getting rid of them.
What was the biggest challenge for you, anywhere from, say, OCS to making aircraft commander and kind of settling into a rhythm as a naval aviator? What was the biggest challenge for you during that time period?
It would be letting go of my enlisted side and figuring out where I belong. So as a student in the FRS, the Fleet Replacement Squadron, flying with still instructors who were lieutenants, I would kind of gravitate toward the crewmen, to our air crewmen that we had, which they're, always were great people. But they're looking at me as an officer, and I just look at them as enlisted, which I was just 18 months ago. So that was, I think, a big problem, was that not identity politics, but realizing, hey, I'm not just one of the enlisted anymore. So it's kind of, it's not forgetting where you came from. It's just never changed. So I didn't change. I just kind of had to adjust a little bit to that officer lifestyle of who I was and kind of fitting in. I think that was probably the hardest part in that first 2 years. I'm here to be your boss, not your buddy, and I can be both. If I'm going to be one, then I got to be your boss, kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's difficult when you're a non-commissioned officer and then you're suddenly, a pilot and you're, warrant officer, or in the Army, we call them RLOs, real live officers. And you're suddenly making decisions that affect people. Yeah, that's a tough transition. Okay. So you ended up flying in the Navy. Now, how long did you fly for?
That tour was 3 years. Then I went down to the flight instructor tour, which I loved it. I really loved instructing and teaching guys to fly. I usually could find enough humor in their mistakes to teach them a better way or a technique to teach them. So I did 3 years there of flying. Then I did a couple of non-flying tours. I was the hangar officer and eventually the mini boss on USS Nassau. I was admiral staff. I was executive assistant for a 2-star and a 1-star. And then I got picked up for the department head. So then I transitioned to the 60 Sierra in about 2013. And that was the first time I ever flew with night vision goggles. I had never flown with them prior to that, because the H3 wasn't compatible. I wasn't trained to do it down as a HT, as a flight instructor, because you had to have at least 100 hours to instruct it, and I had 0. That was roughly 2013. Did a full workups deployment on that. Probably my best deployment. I love that one. And when I left that tour, they said, do you want to go be the executive assistant for a 3-star admiral and make Xerox copies and PowerPoints? Or do you want to go to the FRS and be the operations officer and fly and teach? So it was like, $200, our butt kicking here. Oh, I'll take the $200. So I went and did that for another 4 years. So I kind of really got lucky with the length of time I was able to fly compared to the normal platform for the rest of the naval aviator, especially for helicopter guys. It's very regimented on your tours. And I just kind of got lucky in where I fell in to get that extra flight tour at the end, which is where I retired out of.
So you got a pretty unique perspective, being a pilot, being a naval aviator, and also being an instructor. For a young person considering making this their career, tell us a little bit about, post OCS. What's the process like there at Pensacola? What are the steps?
So after you finish OCS, which has moved, it's no longer in Pensacola, there's up in Rhode Island, you do what's called API, which is Aviation Pre-Flight Indoctrination. And there they're teaching you basic, how a plane flies, aerodynamics, FAA, FAR, AIM, so all types of regulations dealing with rules of the road, lighting on an aircraft, who has the right of way, engines, systems, jet engines, props. That is about 4 weeks of classes. And in between there, you're also working on some of the things people don't realize that you have to do with aviation survival training. And one of those is you have to swim a mile in a flight suit. You have to tread water in a flight suit and boots for 5 minutes without any flotation. You have to learn how all types of water survival, plus on land survival, because we do them both. And you're kind of building up to that in between those classes. And you do, we always called it redneck parasailing. So they take you out in Alabama behind a truck in a parachute, and they pull you till you get airborne, stop the truck, and you drift down. And as you're drifting down, you're learning how to land with a parachute in case you had to bail out. And then everyone's favorite, the spin and puke. And actually, even though it was the early 2000s, I have video of the spin and puke, which are teaching you how you can get spatially disoriented, which is a huge danger in aviation.
Sure.
And we train on it a lot, but that's kind of your first exposure to spatial disorientation when you are the leans. There's different types of names. There's different types of disorientation where you think you're moving to the right, but you're really moving to the left kind of thing.
Okay, so you go through the spin and puke.
Yeah, you go through the spin and puke because you have to get aeronautically adapted. I mean, I was flying, so on my enlisted side, I was flying in the back of helicopters, taking pictures, riding backwards, living my best life, and I get in a T-34, and my first couple flights, I was puking my guts out.
So what was the timeline for there? So you went from spin and puke, you did the API, and then what happened next?
So API is roughly 6 weeks long, and in those halfway through, you will find out where you're going to go for your primary flight school. The Navy does 2 primary flight schools, Corpus Christi, Texas for primary, or Whiting Field, which is just north of Pensacola. We wanted to go to Texas. My wife was from Texas, so we went to Corpus Christi for primary. And the pipeline's changed a little bit, but that part's still the same. You will then go to your primary flight school, and you're there for 6 to 9 months learning to fly. Now it's the T6. So, but it's the same thing. They introduce it at various levels. You will start with basic classes, systems on the aircraft, emergencies on the aircraft. Then you'll jump into cockpit trainers, which are like simulators, but they don't really move. And it's just teaching you how to start the aircraft, what the buttons do, what buttons you hit during certain emergencies. So they're not wasting a whole sim times. There's only so many sims. And you're doing that, and then you'll get your on wing. The person is going to teach you to fly for the first 7 or 8 flights. You'll pair up, and then those are only going to be daytime VFR type flights, basically crawl, walk, run. So you're going to do that through that pipeline. Then once you get done with that, you'll go back into basic instrument training. So not radio instruments, not so much flying instrument approaches, but learning just how to navigate off of, how to read, a VOR or a TACAN, how to use the needles, how the head falls, tail rise with the needles, point to point using GPS. So you learn it through that. And so you kind of go back and forth with flying, your familiarization flights, instrument flights, back into flying some more, start introducing aerobatics, start learning some instrument stuff, a little more in-depth instrument stuff, back to doing formation flights, formation aerobatic flights, back into more instrument stuff, and you kind of keep going, and then sprinkle in some nighttime in some of those, to eventually you get close to where you're going to wing. So, this is over a 6-month period. And at the end of that, based off your grades and the needs of the Navy, you put in your wish list of where you want to go for your next airframe. And it's basically broken down into jets, props, or helicopters. But you're also training with Marine and Coast Guard. So you're not really in competition with them, but they are winging or completing at the same time as you. So they'll have different, whatever the Marines need or whatever the Coast Guard needs kind of thing.
Do you have NATO partner students like we do in the Army?
We do, yeah. Yeah, lots of, Saudi, Japan. I've seen so many different nationalities they're training. That you just don't think of, that are part of either the agreements when they sell the aircraft or train the pilots, are ones where we just kind of swap. And then for a while we were swapping even inter-service with Air Force. There's a couple of Air Force guys that are training with us, and then same thing, they would send the Navy guys for their primary there, not for the advanced, but just for the basic flight school. As they I think the DoD tried to go with a kind of one size fits all. Can we use the same thing to train everybody and cut down on cost and stuff? But they're all there's so much differences between the services. I think it's kind of one of those that's kind of hard to do for a real long term.
One of them that I'm curious about is in the Army, we took our academic records and our check ride scores, and then we took a PT test. And then they took the PT score and they put that in there before aircraft selection. Does the Navy do that?
No, you have to pass your physical readiness test, but and you can get higher scores on it. But our fit reps, while you're a student, they're basically called a not observed. So as long as you don't get in trouble and you can pass your physical, it's just a not observed, just to kind of keep you moving right in the pipeline.
Okay.
We don't. If you can do a mile and a half, then you can do it. It was good.
Hey everybody, I want to take a quick second to thank my friends at Phantom Products for believing in Make the Donuts, sponsoring this first season. They're powering us, and on top of that, they powered some amazing lighting applications. Since 1943, they've been providing lighting to the military. They used to light the shipping lanes for military transports during World War II. They provided lights to the New York Police Department, the New York Fire Department, and first responders all over this country. They're family owned, they're American made. When I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, I was using this Phantom TLS, and it's an awesome light. It's got covert secure white, it's got cyan, it's got infrared, it's got these built-in flash patterns if you need it. In a roundabout way, without this light, there's some people in this world that probably wouldn't be here. So I want to thank Phantom Products again for believing in the show, for sponsoring us, and for the great stuff you guys make. Check out the website. We'll drop it down in the show notes. And again, Phantom Products, thanks for helping us make the donuts.
Okay. And so you went to the Fleet Replacement Squadron. I guess it's like a RAG, and you get out there and you get proficient on the H3. And then, of course, later on, you became an instructor. Now, before you left the Navy, you're pretty much a 60 guy. What was your favorite assignment besides teaching flight school? What was your favorite assignment downrange?
My OIC, so my officer in charge detachment, was by far, I mean, I just hit the jackpot. I mean, my crew, so all the lieutenants I had, my maintainers, my chiefs, I mean, just top-notch individuals all around. So I got lucky with that. But that was in Italy. But what we did was we went over off of Sochi, Russia, and I was the OIC for all the helicopter operations in the Black Sea during the Winter Olympics in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So we were right off the coast, could see the fireworks. A matter of fact, my retirement flag, I flew it on the ship during the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics in 2014. So I think that was, if I had to say one thing downrange, it would be that deployment, because we hit a lot of ports I'd never been to. Georgia, Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey. I mean, just kind of everything in there. And there was also a lot of Cold War kind of pushing and shoving going on.
Yeah.
If you kind of think back to 2014, kind of before things really started kicking off with Russia.
In Crimea,
There was definitely some things there. They got briefed up to the president that was happening with us. And I was at 150 feet. This is not classified. I was at 150 feet, and I had 2 MiGs fly under me in the Black Sea.
What?
Yeah. There was a lot of...
Where were the Hornets at?
Well, there was no carrier there. I was on the Mount Whitney, which is a command and control ship. Because you got to think about to be able to get into the Black Sea. I don't think you could even fit one in there to get through the straits.
Where's
as
the
you
Air
come
Force?
Up there. Probably on the golf course. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
But as soon as you hit into the Black Sea, you will have. We had 2 Russian ships on us the whole time. They just trail you everywhere you go. So we did a lot of photos with those guys in the background, with us doing just pictures, because they just stay on you the whole time. So it's that. Yeah. So that was my best, probably, deployment of all the ones I've done for sure.
Okay. So you did your time in the Navy. How many years did you do?
27.
27. Okay.
Yeah.
And you get out. What was the next career move you made?
So roughly 2018, 2017, started the RTP program, started hearing about rotary pilots, rotary transition program going into, and for the airlines. Airlines are starting to advertise big money, big bonuses. Had never thought about it, so I kind of looked into it, and I was like, hey, this might be the best thing for me. And also that time, I had a medical event that I thought was going to down me for the rest of my career. And I had to fight to get my medical back, and I wrote an article for RTAG. I don't know if you kind of remember that, called Navigating the First Class Medical Process, because there's a huge disconnect from military medical and FAA medical. From the medicines you can take, from the things you can be diagnosed with. So I kind of wrote an article on it, which is still out there, but talks about that transition, because it's difficult. It was lacking. So I had to go to a specialist. Took me 6 months. Finally got everything cleared. Got my medical, and I was one of the first Navy guys to use the Skill Bridge program, because that was coming online. There wasn't a whole lot of information about it. There was a DoD directive, and there was a nav admin, but not much, because it seems like at the time it was bigger on the Army side than it was on the Navy side. But I was able to leverage that to retire from the Navy, then go and do all my time building that PSA Airlines was paying for to finish up getting it. I already had a lot of my medical or my FAA licenses, but I needed my multi-engine, and I needed my ATP, which is what the airlines at the time were paying for. So in 2019, I retired, did time building, and then started up with PSA, and as one of their RTPs, but as a first officer with them.
And what'd you think about that, flying stuck wing jets versus what you had been done? Boring?
There were parts that were boring. I think for me, one, my heart was in helicopters. It just truly was. My grandfather, helicopter pilot. My dad's a helicopter pilot. Grandfather on my dad's side, he's fixed wing Air Force guy. I mean, I think my heart was in helicopters. Plus, the wild card and all that was COVID was being introduced. So I started flying empty airplanes. So now I'm not doing a whole lot of flights. I'm not staying proficient like I wanted to. I just wasn't reaching the comfort level that I wanted flying jets and flying people. I mean, I enjoyed certain aspects of it, but I think it just wasn't for me. And it wasn't until in 2020, at the end of 2020, the PSA had a furlough of pilots, about 723 pilots or so. And I was, of course, one of those.
Yeah.
And I had a old crewman of mine who, Navy crewman, went Army warrant, called me up and said, hey, my company is opening a new EMS base up in Richmond, Virginia, 100 miles from you. So went up there, applied, got the job, and that was kind of how I transitioned from the airlines into the EMS community. And then for me, it was like coming home. I felt like I just had found my home for sure.
So tell us about your experience going into HEMS. What was that like?
It was very eye-opening because how I thought things operated was not how it operated at all. It's just, between movies and other things you see on TV of how you get a phone call, you're landing on a highway, you're landing in fields. But I didn't realize the sheer number of inter-facility transfers that you do from one hospital to another, just someone getting to a higher level of care. But what it did feel for me was I missed that brotherhood from the military, that ready room, sitting around, everybody going to lunch. I just didn't get that at the airline. Right. But when I got into EMS, you're flying, always with the same people, because the airlines, you're always flying with strangers. So it's always a different captain. It's always a different flight crew. So flying with these guys, I described it today. I was talking to a buddy with flying the medics, like flying with a bunch of senior chiefs. Very seasoned, very professional, older, but know what they're doing. And the same thing for the nurses. I mean, it really was just, for me, a natural fit to be in that medical community without having to put hands on the patient.
Interesting. What's the dynamic of personalities? And I guess I mean this in not like a chain of command, but how does the workflow work with the different people involved?
So the way I do it at my current base, which is Nightingale and is a great base, our crew, we're just one crew. So it's not my cockpit, it's our aircraft. And my last 4 years in the Navy, I was an instructor, and mostly I taught guys how to land on the ship. And we even have aircrew students who aren't even winged in the back. So you got an 18-year-old, he's not talking. And so I learned that if I want to have an inclusive environment, I have to empower them to talk.
And we're talking about inclusive. You're talking about communication, right?
Yeah, communication. Because you got a commander flying. Commander says we're going to do this. The airman in the back's not going to say anything. He's not going to challenge you. But I want him to challenge me. And so I brought a lot of that training into the EMS community, into this base, which is how this base was already operating. Look, if you think I'm doing something unsafe, challenge me. Ask me. Hey, why are you going this way? Or why are you doing it like this? Because sometimes they might say something and realize, hey, you know what? This is a better way. Or if I'm the only one out the other three pilots doing it this way, kind of why? So our crew, our flight crew, we work very well together. It's just kind of one big family. Your normal makeup is pilot, nurse, medic. And our nurse and medics are kind of interchangeable. Every flight, one of them's in the front with me until a patient's on board, and then they're both in the back.
Okay.
On the EC-145.
When you got hired by Metro, what was the training process with them like?
My interview with Metro, and this is one of the things I liked about Metro, was with other companies, it was a 10-minute phone call. Hey, you know how to fly yet? You're hired. Metro was 2 phone calls, an in-person interview, and then they sent me down to their headquarters and put me in a flight sim and challenged me that way. But while I was standing there, one of the Metro employees came up to me and he said, hey, I'm Noel. I said, hi, I'm Scott Moak. And he says, are you any kin to John? I said, well, that's my uncle. He said, are you Larry's boy? I said, yeah, that's my dad. He says, well, I flew your dad in the Gulf and I flew your uncle in Vietnam. And I mean, you talk about a family community. That was just very surprised at my interview to run into someone like that. And so with the pipeline, after you get hired, and this is one of the things I really love about Metro, is you do a week of NDOC about the company, about the benefits, and you're not focused on also trying to learn aircraft and systems and EPs, because they want you to focus on the benefits that are available to you and how they do business. Then your second week are systems about your individual aircraft. Then you get into the simulator, roughly a week, but you're only doing day and night, but you're only doing VFR. You might have a little bit of IFR just for inadvertent IMC, but they're only teaching you for day and night visual flight rules. Because when you get to the fleet side, your first 6 months, you're limited to VFR only. And they do that so you can get very comfortable flying the aircraft safely without having to worry about clouds and instruments, then come back 6 months later and learn the rest of the process for their instrument training.
For your missions, are you flying a lot of IFR, or are you even flying an IMC for some of these transfer flights, or is it predominantly VFR?
Probably 90% VFR, but Metro, the owner of Metro, Mr. Mike, the president, he says helicopter guys never fly IFR because they never fly IFR. So I mandated to do 3 instrument approaches on separate flights per month. Every 3 months, we go out of service. I fly with another pilot from my base, and we do a whole hour of instrument training. And then every 6 months, I do a check ride, either in the aircraft or in the sim. It alternates. Okay. But we do, here at my base, a couple a month. It varies with it. We still have rules, but we have proprietary approaches all around the Hampton Roads area to the Outer Banks, Eastern Shore, various fire stations. So it's a nice kind of having your hip pocket. Even to our hospital downtown, we have an LPV approach. Takes us all the way down, as low as we need, really.
What is the most challenging thing about working at Metro?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily with Metro. I think it's when you have to make a weather decision and it's not a clear, obvious answer. When the weather's too bad and it's an easy no or it's an easy yes. It's the times where it's kind of in between and you're kind of trying to read the tea leaves. The temperature dew point spread, there's fog over here. You're just trying to make that decision. And so one of the things I do is I will call up our operational control center at Metro, which is staffed by pilots, and talk to the pilot and say, hey, I'm thinking about taking this flight. Here are my concerns. The thunderstorms out west. What do you think? And they will look on their instrumentation, all their radars, and say, well, it looks like to us that thunderstorm will get there at the same time you get there. So we're going to tell you no, because we don't think you should do it. So to me, that was easy, and I really like to be vindicated when I decide not to take a flight. And then 30 minutes later, it drops down to low IFR, 200-foot steal-in, quarter-mile viz. And I feel like, hey, I definitely made the right choice. So I think it's making those decisions and that's what they're paying me. They're paying me to say no.
Yeah, that's why you get the big bucks, right? And so Metro's giving you a lot of tools to make those decisions. You have other people that you can talk to at the OCC.
Yeah, Metro gives you a lot of tools. They don't want you to try it. They want you to either do the flight or don't do the flight, because in their mind, if you take off 10 minutes to your launch, 20 minutes to get to a patient, the weather's so bad you can't land, you just wasted 30 minutes of the patient's time. And that's kind of what Metro's not about, that. Metro doesn't do any patient billing because Metro doesn't want to take advantage of someone on their worst day. So we don't do any patient billing. That's a hospital medical insurance thing that we just don't have to deal with.
Wow. That's I don't know how rare that is, but that's awesome. And it sounds like the best of both worlds. It's like medevac, but you're not getting shot at.
Yeah, definitely.
Could any enlisted person in another service become a naval aviator? Like, could you come over from the Army if you were enlisted and you had a degree and apply and get into to naval aviation like that?
You would need a degree, and then you would just apply through, probably depending on how you got your degree. If you did it through ROTC, you wouldn't have to do any type of OCS, or you could just go straight OCS, which is what I did. But you definitely could do it. But there are age limits. I'm not up to speed on the most current age limits. I know At one point it was if you had prior service time, you had to be commissioned, not at flight school, but commissioned prior to age 31.
Okay.
I think that might have moved further down as they tried to increase the recruiting numbers. But but it's not the same as some of the, I think what was like blue to green, green to blue programs they had for a while, where people would kind of just cross service over.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll drop down the comments. We'll drop a link to naval recruiting, a good link for folks who are interested in doing that, as well as the article that you wrote, which is, as a writer, I thought it was very well done about your medical process. It's very encouraging.
Well, thank you.
What's your advice to an enlisted person who's thinking about becoming a Mustang, who's thinking about going and becoming an officer or becoming a naval aviator? Really, what would you tell them right now?
I would tell them to not do their job as if they're getting out. And that's one of the things that really saved me. It's so many times I was going to get out of the Navy. I was going to get out, finish my enlistment, but I never did my job like I was getting out. I kept promoting, I kept studying, I kept being a go-to guy. And I've seen so many sailors kind of just, drop their pack because they're going to get out, which is, fine if that's what they want to do. But then when they make a decision to re-enlist, they've kind of put themselves into a bad position because they didn't maintain their qualifications. So that was probably the biggest thing I would say to anybody on the enlisted side is keep pushing right, keep working on your qualifications. The Navy is very regimented on enlisted aviation warfare specialist, surface warfare specialist, getting those qualifications to make you eligible for the next promotion or the next spot. And then take advantage of all the college that is available. So not just, if you're not on the ship and you can't go to the regular college class, CLEP test. I CLEP'd a whole year's worth of school. So if you guys haven't looked into it, it's basically you take the test. If you score high enough, you get college credit for it. And I mean, it took me 3 tries, but I CLEP'd college algebra because they were free. The military is paying for it. I would go and study and then pass it. So there's a lot of ways for kind of non-traditional college that you can still get that degree if you're putting the time in. So those 2 things right there are probably the biggest things I would push, a sailor or anybody enlisted really in any branch, I think, to move forward is take advantage of that.
I would add, too, that there's probably Navy programs that even you and I don't know about. When I went through boot camp, I met a guy in the SAM program, which would have been perfect for me, but my recruiter didn't tell me. Mitch Bell, Taco, he talks about a kind of a famous Tomcat pilot named Leekster who went through a special program where he didn't even have a degree. And he selected Tomcats, and of course he had to finish his degree within a certain time period. So maybe there's a program now in the Navy, I don't know, that will open up an opportunity for you. Maybe there'll be one in the future because it seems like those programs come and then they go and they come and they go.
They do come and go. I can remember when the Navy did a little bit of the flying warrant for a while.
Oh, yeah.
They tested that, and and I knew some of them, and they were great. It was the issue gets to be for the Navy the timing of when you leave your sea duty and then you go to shore duty to instruct. It's not like the Army has it with the warrants doing instructions and having not as many line officers, which is the lineup and what you have to get. There are certain wickets you have to get to keep moving to be eligible to promote to 04 and to screen for department head. And that was a problem, I think, for the warrant program for the Navy. And then timing is everything in the Navy. For promotion and boards. I mean, you can be number 1 everywhere you go, but if you had bad timing, you just might not make it, for that next screen board or selection board.
Oh, it's like love flying in your career. It's all timing, right?
Right.
Okay. So now switching gears, if you want to become a HEMS pilot, what kind of advice can you give for that?
Well, I think I do a lot of mentoring. I mean, 3 guys this week alone, that, hey, getting out of the Navy, want to go into EMS. It sounds awesome. I always ask them first thing, have you gotten your medical yet? And most of them say no. I said, well, start there because there could be a showstopper in that you don't even know about or could take time. So get that done. And that's the same thing I've told anybody looking to go to the airlines. Get that out the way because no one's going to interview you if you don't have it in your hand. No one's going to look at you. So once you have that, I think if it's someone, whether it's off the street or military, and you want to go EMS, It's figuring out either the company or the base. The base you want might not be the company you want. So it gets to be, are you going to commute? What are their benefits? Do they provide housing or not? They all have different resources for you to kind of help you out through all that. And then you got to have the flight time. And that seems to be probably the biggest hiccup for people, that 2,000 flight hours. But the guy today, I talked to my buddy, he says, hey, I only have 1,800 hours. I said, well, don't forget, Metro counts simulator time. And he goes, oh, I didn't realize that. Like, yeah. So be sure you take a look at your simulator time. If it meets the requirements of the sim, you can count that towards your total flight time. And then what a lot of people don't realize on the civilian side, they have to have a certain amount of cross-country time, is that cross-country miles for fixed wing is different than helicopters. Helicopter cross-country is only 25 nautical miles.
Okay.
So it's the people who don't get their stuff in order prior to an interview or prior to applying. And that is where they struggle.
Okay. Well, we'll tag Metro Aviation, and we'll drop a link in the bottom. If folks want to reach out to you for mentorship, is that something you'd be interested in, and how would they do that?
It's definitely, I mean, I don't have a service or anything. I just like kind of helping back. I feel like the Navy gave me so much. I like giving back to people. And it's not just the military. I have a lot of civilians reach out, or a lot of military to talk about the VA benefits. There's a lot of ways to navigate that to maximize the benefits, but keep your FAA medical. So that can be tricky sometimes. But I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm at Scott Moak Pilot, MOAK. I'm also on Instagram. Give me a follow. I'm at Scott Moak. Not to be confused with the Scott Moak announcer for all the LA teams, because I get tagged in a lot of his stuff.
I thought that was you.
Yeah.
Or you mean he gets tagged in a lot of your posts?
I think it's, as he does news interviews, someone will tag him thinking he's me, but definitely on Instagram. And then, so that's probably the two. I'm also on Facebook, I guess, to be a little more personal stuff, but my Instagram is mostly just helicopter professional type photos.
Yeah, it's great
LinkedIn,
photos
of
too.
Course, is just thank you. That was all those years of.
It's obvious that you were a professional photographer before you're a pilot. I was always wondering, like, how does he know how to do all this stuff? And then I found out, like, oh, okay.
No, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, one last thing. There's a young guy, young gal looking at this right now. They're watching the show and they're saying to themselves, I don't think I'm smart enough. I remember a medic of mine who it was amazing. And she did not think she could be a pilot. She didn't think she could. She didn't think she could be a medic. And she used to go over to the fence near the hospital and watch HEMS pilots land these helicopters, and the medics and nurses get out. And of course, years later, she became the oldest pilot in U.S. history in the Army. 44 years old, I think, when she got her wings. But there's somebody like her right now who doesn't think they can do it. Tell them right now what you think about that.
There's nothing stopping you but you, is kind of how I feel. When I was on the Saratoga and washing dishes for 5,000 sailors as an airman apprentice as an E2, I never thought it was a pipe dream to see these officers and to be, you're not only an officer, but a pilot. But you can't get any dreams if you don't try for them, and you got to expect some failure. So I think it's not if you're not smart enough, it's do you put the work in? And we've seen it on briefs. A guy who shows up for a brief and he's prepared for the brief, but he struggles in the aircraft, we're going to give him extra time. We're going to help them along. Someone who shows up unprepared, didn't study, it's hard to do that. I can't make you study, but I can help you with the stick skills for sure. So I think anybody out there that if this is their goal or their path, it's obtainable. Lots of people do it all the time. It's just you got to put the work in. You got to put the self-study in. And just, it's about attitude. To me, I laugh every day. I love my job. And I think that attitude, my attitude has never changed from when I was washing dishes on the Saratoga to now flying EMS with, some great med crew and for a great company like Metro.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Folks, if you want to know more, Scott Moak, he's all over social media. You can't miss him. He's got the amazing helicopter pictures. He makes himself available. If you're interested in becoming a helicopter pilot, a HEMS pilot, going from enlisted to officer, particularly in the Navy. I can't think of a better mentor that you can find than Scott Moak. So make sure you check him out. Subscribe to the channel for sure. We'd love to have you for the next Make the Donuts episode. We'll be having these, I think, throughout the next 6 to or so months for season 1. Okay. Then we'll start season 2. But we'd love to have you on the show. Scott, I really appreciate you having on.
Thanks. I appreciate it.